I I've given up news altogether. All news is gone. I was in the hospital 3 months back or so, February, and I listened to the news because somebody else had it on, and I was ready to be sick about it. I mean, I don't know what it was exactly. It was some kind of shooting or something. But I have cut news off. Boom. I will not listen to news anymore because it's not news. It's propaganda.
Welcome to OTR, Over the Rainbow, Achieving Mental Health for Real. This podcast offers hope to many people who needlessly suffer from mental health issues. Your host, Bob Adelman, interviews experts like doctors, counselors, and life artists who give helpful tips on living a happier life. But most importantly, Bob interviews ordinary people who have suffered with a mental health issue. Each one has recovered to lead a much happier life. You can do it too. Bob's notes on today's show followed.
This is a special episode that examines lies. We look at how lies are so prevalent, especially in today's world, and how they can distract you from the truth. I talk about my belief that truth equals love equals God. We examine each type of lie from a white lie to justification. I believe that living truthfully yourself and with others can help your mental health immensely. How the U.S. is so polarized politically as the news shows spout propaganda, a lie. How people may lie to themselves. I was originally hoping to get this out for Independence Day as a solo show. I did many different versions, but they all came out preachy and monotone. Then I thought of John Lee from the shows What is the Meaning of Life? Why Are We Here? Back in December of 2021 and What is Consciousness? Last March 2022. Thanks to John, it finally came out very entertaining. So, get ready for the truth.
Now, here's Bob with today's show.
How you doing, John?
I'm well, Bob. How are you?
I'm doing great. Doing great. Today, I wanted to talk about lies with you. If the audience remembers John Lee, I did a couple of shows with John a while back in December of 2021. It was What is the Meaning of Life? We also did the show, What is Consciousness? Can it be reproduced? What do we do with it? So we got John back again because I was trying to get this done by myself, but it was getting too preachy and too monotone. So I figured a conversation would be better. The topic is lies, untruth. John, do you want to make an opening comment about lies?
I guess the first thought is there may be this preconception out there that maybe all lies are bad. I don't know. I don't think all lies are necessarily bad or morally wrong. I think some white lies, some small lies we tell as a form of politeness, of social convention, to be kind to one another, to smooth social interaction. So I don't consider those things morally wrong.
And that segues right into what I wanted to try to do with this is there's so many lies that exist, they had to categorize it, or I have to categorize it. John was speaking about the white lie, which is typically if somebody asks, how are you doing? Even though you feel miserable, you might say, I'm doing okay. The other one we like a lot is exaggeration. And that's pretty much just a lie, but it's like a used car salesman. He's going to exaggerate every part of the car. So it's not a direct lie. They also call that like a spin. So,
bending the truth.
Yeah. Political people do a lot of spinning. You know, they have a spin room after a presidential address, for instance. And, so I think that we do a lot of spinning and exaggerating. One of the things I think we exaggerate is ourselves. Would you agree with me on that, Joe?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think the thought that comes to mind is at the moment is everything we do is motivated. Setting that premise, white lies tend to be motivated by kindness, to not hurt the person we're speaking to smooth an interaction, etc. I think exaggeration can go both ways. Um, a car salesman that's trying to get a sale, they're motivated by profit. They may exaggerate the truth to win that sale, and that may not be the best motivation. If they're stretching the truth beyond uh, reality, that would be, I think, morally questionable. But again, I think the motive is what matters. If your motive is good, then exaggerating the truth can be okay.
Yeah, I think when you talk about sales, I think that's good and bad. Okay, it's good for the salesperson, but maybe not so good for you when you buy the car. That's not as good as it's supposed to be. So a lot of it has to do with, I guess, I'm searching for integrity in a person. That's why I never could really do sales, because I don't like exaggerating. I don't like spinning things. My personality is very open. I tell you what I'm thinking. I have severe ADHD, which is one of the symptoms of ADHD, that you're an open book, that you don't know where your boundaries are. But if we talk about boundaries, that's another big part of truth or lies, I think.
I'm not, just going back to the salesperson point, I'm not that negative on sales as a profession or salespeople. I think it depends on what they're selling. I think everyone's a salesperson in some respect. We're all selling our ideas, our opinions, our perspective. So if the salesperson is selling a product or service they truly believe will help the customer, and they're passionate about that, and they're emphasizing the good points of the product, and they believe it's going to help the customer, I don't see anything questionable about that. I think the point it becomes questionable morally is when the salesperson is motivated by selfishness more so than helpfulness for the customer. They want the profit, or they want the sale, they want to make money over actually helping the customer in a real way.
And that's a dog eat dog kind of mentality. People say that's okay. People say that's what everybody does. People say, if you're too nice, they're going to step on you. Let's just take a look at a couple more lies categories. Lies categories. It's hard to say. Propaganda. Now, to me, propaganda is an exaggeration, but it's a specific type meant to, usually in a government will hand out propaganda, but it could be other people. But mostly it's a large group that wants another group to believe something. For instance, that all Russians are bad. Back in the 60s, when we had the Cuban Missile Crisis and, of course, the Cold War, we want to make people believe a certain group is bad. Back in WW2, all Japanese people hated Americans, and Americans hated Japanese. Not all. I can't say all. But a large majority were motivated by their hatred of the other group. Okay? It may have been what I'm going to get to next, which I think is the most damaging of all lies, in my opinion, on my humble opinion, is justification. I think that's a real big one. In other words, what can you say to yourself or others that will defend something that probably is morally incorrect? In other words, a good example of that is American Indians. When they weren't Americans back then, they were just people, and we pretty much eliminated them, but we still hated them. Same thing happened with Nazi Germany.
Yeah. I've got a couple of thoughts rolling in my head, but the first thought I had was around the Nazis. There was a quote that I remember where someone said, the Nazis first killed the Jews because they hated them, but then afterwards they started hating the Jews because they killed them. So there's an idea there around our behavior also fueling these emotions. And then the other thought was going back to one of the first points is all communication is motivated. Just realizing that, and propaganda is just another form of motivated communication. I'm just realizing that like there's no neutral communication.
Very little. I think maybe if you get to know somebody really well or love that person, you tend to just tell them the truth about yourself, or what your fears are.
Yeah.
So that it seems the better you know them, the boundaries go down. And at some point, maybe if you have a true love, then, because it doesn't always go down when you get married or something, because relationships are very difficult. They're minefields. You step on one and it blows up.
Yep.
So you really have to be careful what you let out as well.
Right.
And not all things should be let out. I don't think anybody should know everything about a person.
I agree.
What their deeper feelings are.
Yeah. I think that goes back to your point about boundaries and also wisdom to know what to communicate when.
Right.
And also when you communicate something, when you can communicate a hard truth, for example,
right.
As long as it's motivated by love, there's a chance the other person can receive it. Whereas if a truth is communicated without love as the motivation, then it just tends to go over their head or bounce off of them and cause a negative reaction. You also mentioned self-deception, right? Lies to yourself. You said justification, and the word self-deception came to my mind. These are like delusions or lies we tell ourselves. And that's also another kind of lie that we have to be careful about.
I wanted to put an ADHD spin, talking about spins. I have severe ADHD. And what happens to me is I tend to tell everyone what I'm feeling directly, hard. John was talking about how hard you are. And this caused a terrific rift in my relationship with my adult children, because one day, that magic day, I got really mad and I said some things I shouldn't have said to my daughter, and she ghosted me. She cut me right off because I opened up and said, here's what I'm feeling, even though it's nasty. So I expected her to come back and say, I'm not going to take this, but also here's your answers to your paranoia or whatever was wrong with me at the time, whatever they didn't or did do. So I think there's a lot of problems that occur with justification, because my daughter says she's justified cutting me off.
Mm-hmm.
Now, she's convinced of it. And that goes back to, justifying things.
Yeah.
She knows it's going to hurt me, but she's convinced it's okay to do because I guess she's taking herself first. That type of thing. It's hard to let go. I mean, you have children. I don't know how old your children are, but I mean, there's no deeper bond than parent to child, even stronger than child to parent, I think. No deeper bond. And when that bond gets broken, it hurts a lot. But I know what I have to do is just give her time and hope for the best. That's all I can do.
Yeah, I think you just continue loving her and showing your love for her. And if if there is a God, then he will soften her heart over time and allow her to receive your forgiveness and maybe enable her to forgive you as well.
Yeah. They also say that most people that are estranged come back from their estrangement. Am I saying that right, John? Estrangement. Most people come back to the people that they ghosted. They come back. And I'm hoping for that, but not expecting it. But I didn't mean to get into a tangent on myself. I have a tendency to do that. People
No,
in
that's
pain
okay.
like to talk about themselves. But justification could be the cruelest of all lies, in my opinion.
When you say justification, I hear that as self-justification and
Right. And also
um,
group justification. I mean, my 3 kids are in line with her. They agree with what she's doing, in
mhm.
my opinion. Now, they won't come out and say that. But in my opinion, they're happy she's doing it because I have to be tiptoe with them now, or they'll ghost me. If, now I have to be afraid that they're going to go too. And that makes it even worse. So it's a mess. But my point is that throughout the years, throughout millennium, we have had civilizations justify what they're doing.
Mhm.
And we have individuals that do the same thing.
Correct. Yeah.
So I guess my point is why? I mean, are we immature to the point where we can't even, tell the truth ever with your voice? The truth comes out in music. If you talk about music, that's where truth is. But on a day-to-day basis, I mean, I just think it's soul damaging. Okay. And that brings me to the point that you wanted to talk about, where I say that truth equal love equal God. What's your thought on that?
I think that's correct. Yeah. God is love. God is the ultimate truth. So I think those words are almost synonymous, in that God is the source of all love and all truth. So it's
Now,
interesting how you wrap those words
right.
together in that way.
Well, I put an asterisk on God because I feel that everyone has their own type of God, whether that's part of a religious organization or for myself. I can only speak for myself, but I feel it more in my soul, I guess. So to
Can I just
me, go ahead.
let me just riff on that just for a minute. So I'm
Go
thinking
ahead.
about this idea of self-justification, and you mentioned how people and civilizations even justify their actions. And I think, yeah, that is correct. I think it's almost impossible for a person or a civilization to admit that they're bad, like morally bad. It's almost impossible for, let's say, a government to go to war with another country, on the premise that we are going to take over that other country and we're going to pillage them because because we can. Like I don't think there's ever been a country in the world that's invaded another country on grounds like that, moral grounds like that. It's, as far as I know, it's always there is a good reason for us to go into the other country. We're going to save some people. We're going there
Right.
because we've got a moral obligation to go in there and correct some wrong, to do something good. Um, so that's one point.
Does that mean that truth is unreachable, that we can't reach towards God because of that?
So going back to the God and the truth piece of it. So I believe that God is outside of myself. There is a God who is out there, and truth therefore is out there. It's an objective truth. And therefore that truth can speak into my life and correct me. And it can show me that I am wrong, compared to that truth out there. If let's say a nation or a person does not have that belief and they don't believe that there is a truth out there, an objective truth, but the only truth there is my truth. It's what is inside of me. Then
Right.
almost by definition, I can't correct myself. There's no mechanism to correct my beliefs.
Well, how
And so
about,
whatever I say goes.
I'm sorry. How about integrity? That's a big word, integrity. I mean, if you watch TV, all right, we know what integrity is. It's on TV, but it's not practiced. For example, if you watch any of the Star Trek series, everyone on the show has integrity, a fake integrity, exaggerated integrity, a lie, basically. Because when I grew up and I watched TV, I was very influenced by it. And I thought everybody was like Star Trek, where they helped each other, they did nice things to each other, and they were like a family. I think the show was unrealistic, which is why it's on TV, and it's why it's not real life. And now we all tend to go to real life. I mean, we no longer watch those shows. Nobody watches Star Trek. We have one Star Trek that's any good on Paramount Plus. But I don't understand why more people don't want to be more like those TV shows. Is it just they can't? They don't want to? It's just a dream? Will we evolve into something like that? What do you think about that? Because I struggle
I'm not as
with it.
pessimistic.
Yeah.
I'm not as pessimistic about that. I mean, I think, as far as I can tell, everyone is trying their best to be as integrated, like you said, to have as much integrity as they can possibly have. Some people have more of a capacity to live that way, to live truthfully and honestly than others. But I think everyone's trying the best they can. Everyone's failing. But I think very few people have given up altogether on trying to be quote unquote good people. Probably
No.
3% of the population who are sociopaths don't care.
Right.
But the average normal person with a normal psychology, I think, is trying their best, because I don't think it's possible to live with yourself believing you are a terrible person. Live very long. I think that's not feasible.
So I guess I struggle with understanding people that don't want to reach the truth, or they put other things ahead of the truth, which, like money and power. That's the thing I have trouble with. To me, truth is the holy grail. Whether you believe in God or not, to me, truth is the holy grail.
A word that's coming to my mind is self-worth. I do think everyone is searching for self-worth. So that sense of, I am a somebody. I have done something, or I am significant. I have worth. I think everyone is in search of that. And you're right. I think everyone is going to look for that in different ways. I mean, the big one is money. The big one is, okay, if I have X amount of money, then that's like a very easy way to justify my self-worth. So I do think human beings are cursed in that way. We're always searching for something outside of ourselves to give us that self-worth, and we're never going to get it.
But is it other people? Like, is it other, like, what was Adolf Hitler's motivation? He needed love from everyone, I guess. Is it what we, do we seek the love? Or is it just the thing?
I think it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
I think some people will search for self-worth and power. Money also gives people power. So again, like, it's interesting that Jesus said you can't serve both money and God.
Mm-hmm.
So that phrase comes to mind pretty often, because it's such an easy one to fall into. Like, we always look for ways to make more money, thinking that's
get power.
Yeah, or power. Money gives you power. But at the end of the day, it doesn't satisfy, and we are bombarded. There's so much, we're overwhelmed with evidence that doesn't satisfy. There are people with power and wealth that kill themselves every single
Oh,
day,
yeah.
that hate themselves. That I
Yes.
just read an article today that um, I think it was like 30 or 40% of women over 65 or 60 are on antidepressants in the United States.
Yeah.
Just
Men
the
too.
number of people on antidepressants is mind-boggling.
Do you think it has something to do with our modern way of life? In other words, who has a good diet? Nobody. Nobody has a good diet. We all sneak for the ring dings, right? I mean, is
Mm.
that not true? Do we want a piece of cake? Do we want pizza? Our
Mhm.
diets are terrible. And
Mhm.
after you reach for the ring ding, you feel guilty about it. People are not on good diets.
Yep.
And I think that leads to depression. Not only that, the doctors march to the tune of depression. What's going to make them money? Oh, we'll get them some more pills.
Right.
So I think a lot of people are
I
misled.
think diet's a good. I think that's a good analogy. I think yes, the modern situation. Um, a lot more people today are atheists than they were in the past. We've lost religion in our culture. We're a post-Christian society, and religion was in the U.S. and in Western Europe was a big source of meaning
Oh,
and
yeah.
self-worth in the past. It still is for, I think, most of the world. So having lost that, we are going to the junk food of career and money and popularity online or wherever to try to feed ourselves.
Right. We look for the comment section. How many likes we got today? Look at what's going on with bullying. Look at people that are taking their lives as children. They're children and they're having a hard time. I didn't have a hard time until I went to work. But the children today are killing themselves.
Correct.
Every day I read something. So,
Right.
so what's causing this
That's
crazy
because so yeah. Yes.
escalation? The estrangements are up to 27%. What is causing this rift?
So from my perspective, I think at the root of the estrangement, the mental um, unhealth of our society is disconnection with God. I think that is at the bottom of a lot of our misery is we've lost the connection with the truth out there.
But doesn't that revolve right back around to the truth? I mean, shouldn't people say, look, we're all screwed up. Let's try to go back to truth of some type?
But that's the problem. That's the problem. People don't believe in the truth out there as much as we did in the past. We believe in our own truth, the truth of our own making. The way I feel is the truth for me. And there is no objective capital T truth out there against which I can measure myself and correct myself. And
Well, now we do have it measurement. It's called Republican Democrat. What are you? And don't tell me that you might want to, you know, go to the table and talk about it. You got to be a hardliner, and you got to look at every stinking article that's out there to prove your point.
mm,
They're all talking points from CNN and Fox TV. Those two stations control our economy. I mean, control everyone. Which one are you? Are you the Republican? Are you the Democrat? I mean, I know my son is diehard Republican. I'm not diehard Democrat. I feel that we should talk about it,
agree. Yeah.
but nobody else is joining me with this. Nobody else wants to
I
talk.
think there are people out there, but you're right in that the tribalism is worse. Again, I think because we've lost our connection with the objective truth, we're falling into tribalism. We're finding our tribe, and the truth of our tribe is the truth that we follow, and the others.
It's the real truth. Yeah. Yeah. It's the alternate reality. I mean, I beg my son to meet me halfway on something, anything, but he doesn't. He sticks to the guns. Whatever somebody spouts out on Fox is the next thing I hear from him, in my opinion. I might be wrong about that. I've given up news altogether. All news is gone. I was in the hospital 3 months back or so, February, I think, and I listened to the news because somebody else had it on, and I was ready to be sick about it. I mean, I don't know what it was exactly. It was some kind of shooting or something. But I have cut news off. Boom. I will not listen to news anymore because it's not news. It's propaganda. That thing we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
CNN has an agenda. Fox has an agenda. It's all polarized.
Correct.
And I don't know how we're going to come out of
I find it really interesting that, so we started talking about lies and now we're talking about truth. So it's the opposite of where we started. And I think this is where, this is the nub of it. What is the truth? And
right.
Is there a truth, like a capital T, objective truth out there? Or is there not?
See, I say no. I say there is not. Not one you can reach. It's like, I don't know if you know mathematics. Something goes to the zero but can never make it to zero. A curve that goes close to zero but doesn't make it to zero. I think that's what truth is. It's something we can only get near, like the sun, and then it burns us. I don't know what it is, but no one has the truth. You know, I get email after email. This is the truth. This is the truth. Here we go. Vote for this guy. This is the truth. But it's not the truth because we're not considering the other side. What is the truth? And then there's God's truth. I mean, religious truth. I mean, we can go into abortion right off the bat. That's off the table. No abortion ever can have it. We're going to make it illegal. That's what they want to do. The problem with making anything illegal is it goes on anyway underground. And I ask people to consider that when they talk about, you know, everything's illegal. What about the babies and the mothers that will die because we made it illegal? That's not justifying it enough, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. But it scares the hell out of me because I just don't know.
I think so. The thought I'm coming back to, and I think you and I are agreeing on this, is it's like, okay, the North Star. If there is a North Star and you and I are agreeing there is a North Star, then there's the possibility of us agreeing to that.
But that doesn't make it the truth.
But if you don't believe there is a North Star, or I don't believe there's a North Star, but you do, then the possibility of coming to an agreement is, I think, impossible.
Zero. So what do we do? What do we do about getting back to the table and talking about it rationally like mature people? How do we do that? Is there a way to do it? Is there a politician that's going to run on that platform? I'd vote for him.
So I think these issues like abortion and etc., these political questions,
Guns.
These are all like smaller questions. I think the ultimate question is the God question. Like, is there a God? And if there is a God, like the Christian God, and he loves us, and therefore every human being is made in the image of God and has worth because God made us and loves us. If that's the starting point, if that were the starting point, then that would be the foundation for mutual respect.
But the problem with that is it's right now written by man. I mean, I guess you can say you're saying Jesus is God, but if there are people that don't believe Jesus is God, then we have a big problem.
Well, I don't think everyone has to believe in God to believe that every human being is worthy of respect and equal in dignity. But I do think those that believe in the Christian God have that foundation.
I have to disagree with you on that one. So saying that everything good or truthful is God, that's a slippery slope, because who has the final say? Who?
Yeah.
I mean,
So Bob,
things change.
let me give just a different perspective. So going back to the salesperson perspective, um, I I said everyone's a salesperson, right? There are things that we believe in that we think are true, and whenever we talk to someone who disagrees, we're trying to convince them of the truth that we believe in, including yourself, right? You have beliefs that you feel are true, and when you talk to others, you're trying to convince and persuade them of your perspective. Um,
No one has the scorecard. Okay. I mean, if God is the truth, whatever, how could you say that you have the scorecard? I mean, I don't get it. I know it's an interpretation of the Bible, but in my simple mind, I don't get it. I don't get anything about it.
well, you don't believe it.
You're saying everything in the Bible is easy to understand and interpret.
No, I don't think it's easy to understand and interpret. No, but I do think there is a consensus around some of the core teachings of the Bible and I mean Christianity as an institution, because there are some core beliefs there that um, every Christian, if they call themselves one, believes in.
What I want to do is find the truth, because that's where God is. More than anything, I want the truth. I'm pissed off that we're going to die and not know where we came from. In other words, they're talking the Big Bang comes from nothing. It's ridiculous to me. What does that mean? It's nothing. Is it a video game? Am I the only one playing? I don't know any of these rules. So my kids come to me and say, "Hey, Dad, we know everything. Dad, we know everything in our 30 years of life. Let me explain it to you. Look, you're going to go to hell if you don't do this." But I can't believe that. I can't. Unless you go in there and surgically remove parts of my brain, I can't believe that that's the way to go. For me. But I have myself, I have my own God, and I have my own self, defining way I'm going to act. I'm going to try to do no harm, like a doctor. I'm going to try to find truth when there is none. I mean, there's some, but like you said, we can agree that if a hammer is dropped behind our backs, it's going to fall down, right? We can agree that there's gravity. So for a person like myself, how do I get better? How do I figure this all out? How do I get to the truth? My problem is the openness of my mind. I believe everything everybody says, I think is valid, and it could be true, no matter how ridiculous it might be. I'm trying to get to that truth so I can have love and I can have God. And right now, I'm not there. For me to be happy and content, that's what I need. And it may be a goal that's not achievable. Do you have anything you could tell me on that? Any thoughts that would make sense around that?
I mean, the thought that comes to my mind is you do believe that you do seem to have a very strong sense of what is morally right and wrong. So you do
That's
believe
correct.
that is the truth. Yes.
More so than I think people that say they do. But okay, that's an opinion.
Yeah,
That's subjective.
fair enough. So you do, but you do believe there is a capital T truth, and
Yes,
um, being good and being honest
get
and
you there.
loving. Yeah, this is true for you.
That's what I want.
There is nothing more true than that for
Yeah,
you.
I never wanted money or power. I mean, occasionally I'd slip into it. It's like, oh, that feels good for a second. But that's it. It feels good for a while, and then it goes away because you don't have what you really can have, which is the holy grail, the prize. It's truth. Boom. You're one with God when you have the truth.
Mm. So I would hold on to that. I Yeah, hold on to that, and then I just explore the foundations for that belief. The belief that it is objectively true to be honest, to be loving, and to treat people with respect.
John, I don't understand how people can do anything else in this world. I don't understand it. That's my problem. I mean, when I was 10 years old, I thought playing army was good with the soldiers, but I'm not 10 years old anymore. I'm 65 years old. I'm not believing all this crap that I'm handed down. I'm believing what I think is the truth, and that's where I want to go. But there's so many people blocking the way. I don't know why. I mean, I had children, and now they're all basically against me mainly because of my beliefs, I think. Or it could be that I was a jerk, and they have the right to be mad at me. I don't know the answer to that either. But I ask you now, where would I go if I don't sign up with a certain religious sect? Where do I go to find the truth of things?
So
Where is that place?
here's my train of thought, and I haven't thought it through completely, but let me just give it a try. So I think you're at a point where you're frustrated. You have this strong sense of truth, and you're frustrated that you're trying to live in accordance with that, but the world is not opening itself up to you in the way that you think it ought to. You're trying to live with integrity, following your truth, but your kids aren't responding in the way you expect. Maybe the world is not responding to you in the way you think it ought to, and there's frustration there. The next thought in my head is, so you mentioned maybe I was a jerk, and maybe that's part of the reason. Maybe that's part of the reason my kids aren't responding to
Yes.
me the way I think they ought to. Because I mean, I'm not a perfect person, Bob. I doubt you're a perfect person. I don't think there are any, right? So um, maybe realizing that is part of the frustration as well. We actually are unable to live up to our truth. None of us are 100%
Yes.
correct.
And that is the truth. If
Correct.
anything's true, that is true. No one can live up to what they
Correct.
really want to
We
be.
can't live up to our own standards, period. So yeah, never mind like any external standard of integrity. We can't live up to even our own standards of what is right and wrong.
It's all over the TV set. We know what it is. It comes out in movies too. But we don't live it. We do not live it.
Mm-hmm.
And I fear that we justify everything that we don't live. Like we're not living it, so we justify it.
I think that word guilt is important. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. My sense is you're feeling frustrated that maybe it's complicated. Like we're all complicated, but hear me out. Hear me out here. So you're trying to live according to your truth. You're trying to live a life of integrity. You're frustrated that the world is not opening itself up to you in the way that you expect. You also feel guilty, though, for failing to live 100% according to your truth, because like all of us, we fall short of our own standards, our own expectations, moral standards. And the question is, what do we do with that guilt? What is the solution for that frustration and that guilt?
Well, I think it should be forgiven. That's the whole thing, I guess, God is saying, and that I'll forgive your sins. Just confess them and let's get it over with, and everything will be fine. And that's what I'm saying to my kids too. Let's forget it. Let's go to counseling, get it ironed out. Let's put all the cards on the table and figure out who the bad guy is. Because right now it's only me. It was those three against me. I'm the only bad guy. Now, it's easy to paint me to be a bad guy because, hey, this guy doesn't act like us. He has a different type of brain. He has an ADHD, neurodiverse brain. He doesn't act like us. He's guilty, Your Honor. He's guilty. It's him. And I fear that ADHD people get that a lot.
Again, I'm feeling from you, from your words, a frustration and a sense of not being understood by others. I think what I'm hearing is a hunger for grace, if I can use that word, a hunger for understanding and a hunger for forgiveness.
Yes.
I think the deepest need of every individual is to solve that problem. How do we solve the problem of hating ourselves, of living with the guilt of not living up to our own standards of right and wrong, of our own moral standards? And I don't know of any other solution to that then. So there are two solutions, right? You talked about one, which is self-justification. The one way you can go is to justify yourself, to tell yourself that I am right.
Which most people do, I believe.
Correct. I think that is the easier way to go, to convince myself that I am right, no matter what. So I'm going to make a logic. I'm going to reason my way into justifying my actions and justifying myself, my position. I am right. The other person is wrong. But I think that's a wrong way. I think the correct path is to admit that I am wrong. I have fallen short, and I am guilty in the sense of, at least in the sense of not living up to my own standards. And the solution to that is God forgives me and he accepts me and offers me that grace that I so desperately need. But I think like the end game is justification. I think that's correct. So we're either going to justify ourselves in any way we can, or we're going to be justified by God. So there are only two options on the table, ultimately.
Well, I call it the truth, but okay. I mean, that's why I put an equal sign next to him, because I see him as one thing. I think the closer you get to truth, the closer you get to God, and the better your soul is, and the happier you're happier too. I mean, this is all for happiness. I mean, everybody strives for happiness. I think happiness comes in your terms, God, in my terms, truth, and in the middle is love. And if you love a person, that you have to find a way to forgive also. What I was going to say is, as human beings, we are controlled a lot by our emotions, which are subconscious. You know, people try to control their emotions, which is fine. That's good. But we are controlled by emotion. And I think that's the biggest negative factor in going towards the truth, because our emotions won't let us. In other words, I may respect you, John, but if you piss me off, I'm going to call you an asshole.
Sure.
That's wrong. I shouldn't do that. But my emotions get to me. I get too emotional. That's ADHD, is emotions. It's the emotion that makes people do things, I think.
Completely agree.
That they don't want to necessarily do. I don't know. how to put, I don't know how to wrap this conversation up, but if I had to say why we're losing the battle, I would have to say we are not mature enough to have a handle on our emotions. And I raise my hand. I'm the first one to raise my hand. Ooh, pick me. I don't have any control over my emotions.
Correct. Yeah.
And it makes me do things I regret terribly, like calling my daughter whatever I said. But this is the issue here. How do we find a way to mature to the point where our emotions don't dictate everything, or a lot of things that we don't want it to dictate? Like when my defense goes up when I see a person. I just go up to a person. My defenses are all up because I know they're going to hit me for forgetting something. I forgot 10 things in this conversation. They're going to hit me up for, why'd you forget that word? I told you this yesterday. That, boom, 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 boom. And my emotions go up and I get angry and then I say something I don't want to say. So, and then I feel guilty about saying the thing I didn't want to say. And I think it's true for a lot of people. And I think the only way to really wrap up this whole thing about lies is that lies tend to be the cover-up for your outbursts, your emotions. In other words, I could lie about it somehow, and I would be better off by painting the picture that, I follow all the rules. I do everything I'm supposed to do. I could paint a rosy picture, but I expect people to see it. And it's very hard to see when you go up against a person. It's very hard to see the good in him. I think it's true for most everyone that you're worried about the bad. If there's good comes, that's good. But otherwise, I have to put my defenses up. And I fear that this is the number one enemy, what do they call it? Enemy number one. That because we cannot be mature enough to control our emotions properly, we fall into these traps where we act like we don't want to act.
I agree. I think that's a great place to end because that is the truth. The truth that you just stated is, that confession is the right place to be. That is the truth. The truth is that we are imperfect, that we mess up. Our emotions take over, which is just another way to say that we are imperfect, that we are fallen. We don't do and act and say the way we ought to.
Right.
I think that
I
is
feel
the
like
truth.
I feel the real me. That's the last thing I get in. I feel that the real me is somebody else. This guy occupying my body and saying things he don't want to say. That's not me. That's something else that I can't control, it seems. So
that's exactly what. If just to mention another quote from the Bible, the Apostle Paul. That's exactly what he says. Like, I do what I don't want to do, and I don't do what I want to do. That's exactly what he says, and I think that is the truth from which we can begin to ask the questions, like, what then is the next step? Where do we go from here? If that is the truth, where do we go from here? What's the answer to that?
So
exactly.
And I think the ability to stay positive, I want to end this on a positive note. I think the more you stay positive about that, if you look at baseball, it's a good example. These guys get humbled by the game because it's too hard. Like, life is hard. And they have to be positive or they're finished. In other words, as a person, you don't have to be positive. It's helpful. It's very helpful. But there's no law that says you got to be positive. But for those people to survive the pressure that they go under during a baseball game, whatever, they have to be positive at the end of the day and say, guess what?
Correct.
That was a bad day. Tomorrow will be a good day. I think to sum things up, I would say that people tend to do things they really don't want to do sometimes because of their emotions and maybe their maturity level. And everyone has to, I think, realize that we're not, like you said, perfect, that we're going to make mistakes. And there has to be an element of forgiveness depending on, the crime. I mean, if you abuse somebody in a bad way, that you walk away from that. But I'm saying any relationship worth saving should be saved. And it's hard for me to get the answers that I'm looking for, but you did a great job. I mean, you were perfect. And I want to thank you for coming on the show and being so articulate. And, I really appreciate it. Let's stay in touch.
Absolutely. Appreciate you, Bob. Good luck with everything.
Yeah, you too.
Take care.